In 2010, a family of 4 in California goes missing, and the clues left behind send investigators on a years-long search. Is this a family on the run, or is the truth far more sinister? From ABC Audio in 2020, this is What Happened to the McStays, coming August 11th, wherever you get your podcasts, or subscribe to 2020 True Crime Plus on Apple Podcasts for ad-free episodes, early access to new episodes, and so much more.
Bite into a stacked sandwich made with Hero Bread, and the only thing you'll think is delicious. You won't think it has up to 19 grams protein, 11 to 32 grams of fiber, or just 0 to 5 grams net carbs. But it does. Hero Bread. No compromises, just loaves, buns, tortillas, bagels, and noodles packed with flavor. Right now, get 10% off at hero.co with code IHEART. That's HERO.co, code IHEART. All figures per serving of Hero Bread. See nutrition facts on hero.co.
Whether Margaret Scutt feels like it or not, the dog needs walking. It's the 18th of August, 2002, a Sunday, and winter in Wangaratta. The dark has been down for 2 hours by tea time, and the cold grips the knuckles on her hand as she holds the dog's lead. She wanders up the eastern side of Donald Street, the school side, with the wire fence of the Wangaratta West Primary running along beside her. This is not the bush. This is a corner block in a country town, 4 streets from the highway. There are streetlights the whole way up. There are houses either side with their curtains shut and their heaters going. Margaret will be tucked up at home with a hot Milo herself too, soon enough, in time for backyard blitz. And then, before she gets level with Brian Crescent, she hears music. It seems to be coming from a car parked up ahead on her side of the road. The front of the car is pointed back down towards her, and the front passenger door is standing wide open across the footpath she's walking on. There are 2 people inside it moving about, and there's a street light near enough overhead that she can pick out a P-plate on the rear windscreen. She weighs up the situation. Youngsters, she assumes by the sound of the music and the P's on the car, and a door open across her path. She could step into the gutter and go round it, or squeeze between the door and the fence with the dog, or stand there and ask them to shift. But she decides against it and crosses the road instead, the path of least resistance. And this is how Margaret Scutt comes to be standing on the other side of Donald Street, 4 or 5 metres from a stranger's front door, close enough to hear a man on the step talking to somebody inside the house. The person inside has not come out. They're back behind the flywire, out of the light, and whoever they are much shorter than he is. He's talking, and it's loud, but she can't quite make out what he's saying over the music still coming from the car. Further to that, she's not trying to listen. It's none of her business, she tells herself. She does assume that he is the one that's come out of the car and left the passenger door open behind him. So there are 2 people she does not know, having a rather loud conversation on a doorstep at night. Not wanting to intrude, she crosses back across to the school side of the road and carries on the way she was headed, beyond the car with the music still going. And she is home again, according to her recollections, before 7:30. At the time, there was nothing in any of that worth telling anybody. Not that night, not that month. Margaret Scutt keeps it to herself for 5 years. And by the time she picks up the phone, a coroner has already opened an inquest into what happened to the woman behind the flywire door. Why was she never seen after that night again? G'day, I'm your storyteller, Mark. Welcome back to Struth. This is part 2. And you know the drill. If you've not heard part 1, called Half the Farm, go back and start there. But here's where we left it. Bit of a recap. Kath Bergamin, 37, mother of 3, 19 years on a tobacco farm, 60 kilometres up the King Valley. She had a husband who, according to Kath, had told her that she would never get off that farm alive. In February 2002, we learnt that she tried to take her own life, and she survived it and got herself out. And by winter, she'd rented a house in Wangaratta. She had a flatmate, a job working with people with disabilities. She was completing her course at Wodonga TAFE, and a solicitor was writing to her husband's solicitor about a property settlement. Kath Bergamin, for the first time, was taking control of her life. Before we go any further, a content warning on this one as well. Just a reminder that this episode does deal with family violence. It deals with the night a woman was taken out of her own house, and she has never been found again, presumed murdered. As always, make sure you take care of yourself when listening. Part 2 is called A Clear Night, Moderately Well Lit, and the information that I'm presenting you has not been generated by the local rumour mill. The information has been lifted directly out of a coroner's report and several newspaper articles at the time. And here's what those sources said. Kath had had, by any standards, a big Saturday night. She and her flatmate, Sandy, had hit the town. The Grand Central first, and then across to the Albion, and then back to the Grand Central. And this is where Kath ran into her mate Hayley Costa. Sandy went home about 1:30, but Kath stayed on. And she was there until 5 in the morning. She ended up getting a bed at a friend's place and came home in a taxi at 9 a.m. on the Sunday. And so the last full day of Kath Bergamin's life starts with a hangover. And I must say, I found that detail quite comforting. A woman who had been frightened and isolated throughout her adulthood was finally, at 37, out there living life. Still at the pub when the lights came on at 5 a.m. But sadly, my friends, that's probably the last positive thing I'm going to share with you during this episode. At 3 in the afternoon, Sandy drives her over to Murdoch Road to a baseball game. There is a bloke playing named Robin Seymour, who Kath had been sort of seeing on and off. Nothing serious, since about June. This was the same man we mentioned John tried to warn off in part 1. And so Kath sits and watches him play, and at some point that afternoon, he lets her know his interest has cooled off. Who knows if John's threats had played a part in that decision. And so that happens too to Kath on her last day. She gets let down gently at a baseball game. And then Sandy comes back for her, and they call in at the Safeway, and at 4:04 she buys herself some phone credit. And when they get home, there are already 2 men waiting for them at the house. Pat Primerano and his cousin, Pat Ciccone, back from the Winton races where they'd spent the day and where they had seen John Bergamin with John and Kath's children, Renee and Dylan. They left the track at about 3:45 to beat the traffic, dropped a mate home and came round to Bryan Crescent. Because, you see, Pat Primerano is Sandy Riley's boyfriend. You will also remember from part 1 that it was Pat who came with John to pick up Kath the first time she escaped the farm. He was, and this is the important detail, a good mate of John's. Ciccone talks to Kath for a while. He will later describe exactly what she was wearing, and it matches, item for item, what she still had on when she disappeared. 3/4 red track pants with white stripes, matching red top, Nike runners. And then Kath's daughter, Renee, turns up to the place in Bryan Crescent. Renee's 15 at the time. She's been at the races, as we mentioned, with her father all day, and she's bought some clothes, and she comes in wanting to show them off. According to Sandy's account, Renee stays about half an hour. Pat Primerano offers her a lift, but she knocks it back and walks off across the school grounds instead. And that is the last time Renee Bergamin sees her mother. The two Pats leave soon thereafter, and then, at 5:10, Sandy leaves for her shift, driving Kath's Statesman. And this leaves Kath Bergamin alone in the house with the tally on. Her youngest son, Dylan, is 12, and he is in Wangaratta that afternoon too. His father drops him in Phillipson Street, and he walks around the corner to his mother's place and spends about half an hour playing in a neighbour's backyard, which 2 of the neighbours confirm. When it starts to get dark at around 6, he goes inside Kath's place and he puts a video on. It runs 97 minutes. Coyote ugly, if you were wondering. As per the phone records, at 12 minutes to 6, Hayley Costa rings, and she and Kath talk for nearly 9 minutes. Kath says she's at home watching a video, and they make a plan for Tuesday. Ordinary chit-chat. No cause for alarm. At 33 minutes past 6, a bloke named Sean Dibben rings Kath's mobile. He's a unit manager where she works and wants to know whether she'll pick up an extra shift. She says yes, and he will tell the inquest that she seemed very keen to accept. Kath loved her job. And at 16 minutes past 7, Mandy Duke rings. Mandy and Kath talk for 9 minutes and 35 seconds. And this is the last recorded conversation of Kath Bergamin's life. She's happy. Mandy's certain of that. She's just moved into the new place, and she wants to tell Mandy all about it. She says she cannot come over on the Monday because she's working, and so they settle on Tuesday. Again, there is no sign of tension or fear in Kath's voice. And Kath says that she's home relaxing by herself. Mandy, during the call, can hear the video going on in the background, and Kath even turns it down so they can hear each other better. And Mandy Duke tells the inquest 2 very important things about that call. Firstly, that she heard no other voices in the house, and that Kath had told her she had not seen the kids. Mandy said that Kath would have said so if they were there with her, but in her recollection of that call, she actually said the opposite. And that detail needs picking at, because Renee had been in that house at 4 o'clock. We know that. 3 other adults put her there. So Kath is either talking about the here and now, meaning that the kids aren't with her at 7:20, or perhaps Mandy is recalling the gist of a phrase 4 days after a phone call that she had no reason to memorise and had somehow gotten it wrong. These are both perfectly reasonable explanations for that comment. But what Mandy Duke is certain about, though, is very important. There were no other voices. Kath gave her no indication that anybody was in the house at that time. And that is what the coroner leant on. So where is Dylan? Because his own account is that he watched all 97 minutes of that film, and that his brother and sister collected him 5 or 10 minutes after it finished. And that puts a 12-year-old in the house until about 7:30, which is within a few minutes of a stranger appearing at the front door. Renee's account is that she and her eldest brother Stephen picked Dylan up at 6 o'clock and only stayed 5 minutes. That's significantly different to Dylan's recollection. And Kath, at 7:20, is talking to her friend as though she's on her own. Those 3 things can't all be true. The coroner looked at Dylan and Renee's evidence about their own movements that evening and found it unreliable and gave it little or no weight. They were at the time 15 and 12 years old, and their memories were quite simply too unreliable. In addition, the adults around them were behaving badly. And whatever else is wrong with this case, that is not something to hold against 2 kids. But he did in his findings, draw one inference out of that house, and it's a strange one. When Sandy Riley got home that night, she found Kath's handbag hidden under the doona on Sandy's bed. According to Sandy, that was a habit of Kath's, hiding her bag when her children were in the house, so nothing walked off. And Sandy had made that bed at 5:10, and the bag was not under it then. And so the coroner found that Kath hid her handbag sometime after 5:10, and she did so because she was expecting one of her two youngest children, if not both, or perhaps because one of them was already there. At 11:15, Sandy Riley gets home from work. She comes in the back, because the back is the only door they have a key for, and when they're not together, they leave it open. The key is on top of the fridge where she left it. The lights are on, and Kath's sports shoes are at the foot of her bed. In Sandy's own room, Kath's handbag, as we've mentioned, is tucked under the doona. In the kitchen sink, there is a bowl of vegetable soup, half eaten. On the mantelpiece above the heater, an empty cup of tea. And in the bathroom, a toothbrush is sitting up on the top of the shower recess with a clean towel beside it, because Kath takes her toothbrush into the shower with her. She always has. It looked very much to Sandy like that's what she was expecting to be doing. Sandy Riley looks at all of that and draws the reasonable conclusion, which is that her flatmate has decided unexpectedly to go out. And so she goes to bed. She wakes at 10 the next morning and Kath has not come home. And so she looks again around the house, and this time the house is telling her something quite different. In the hallway there is a single red Nike anklet sock, one of the pair Kath was wearing the last time she saw her. And the electric blanket on Kath's bed is switched on. That is something Kath does before she gets into it. She doesn't leave it on all day. Kath's mobile is also in a drawer beside her bed with missed calls on it. She would not, according to Sandy, have gone anywhere without it. And in the wardrobe too, nothing is gone. Nothing's missing. Nothing except what she was wearing. And so Sandy, beginning to panic, starts to make calls. The neighbours, Mandy Duke, Hayley Costa. Nobody has seen Kath. And she rings her boyfriend, Pat Pimerano's place, and his mother tells her there's been a major fire out at the Bergamin farm that morning. A shed and a car have gone up in flames. The car is a green Toyota Camry. It's registered in Kath Bergamin's name. Sandy asks whether anybody has checked inside it. She's told not to be so stupid.
I'm Serena Williams, and I'm healthier on Ro. I've lost 34 pounds in a year with GLP-1s, diet, and exercise. On Ro, you can access GLP-1 options, including the first FDA-approved GLP-1 pill for weight loss. Go to ro.co/journey to see if you qualify. 14 to 20% average weight loss in 1 year in non-diabetics with obesity or overweight with a weight-related medical condition versus 2.2% to 3.1% in placebo arm. RX only. To stay informed about serious side effects, go to ro.co/safety.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
Chess hunt. Monday morning, 19th of August. It is cold and frosty up the valley. There's a man named Selwyn Wassan working on the Bergamin farm, and that morning he and John Bergamin are cutting up lengths of steel with an oxyacetylene torch near the shed. Wassan has been told to watch out for sparks and to put out any spot fires, and he takes that task seriously, and he watches carefully. He is very clear about that at the inquest when giving evidence. And when the cutting is done, the two men drive about 500 metres down to the bottom paddock and start to prune vines. And then, at some point after 10 o'clock, Stephen Bergamin comes out to the front of the house and calls out to his father. John Bergamin takes the four-wheeler and drives back up to the property. He is gone somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. Wasan, down in the paddock, can see him walking around up near the farmhouse. John comes back, and on his way back, about halfway, Wasan first notices the smoke. The two of them talk about it and then both get on the bike and go around by the main road to the front gate. And that is where Wasan first sees clearly that the shed is on fire. The smoke is black and it's going up fast. Wasan's first move is to run round the back and drag the oxyacetylene gear clear, and then he goes round the front. And what he sees at the front is that most of the flames are centred on the back driver's side of the Toyota Camry, which has been reversed into that shed, rather than driven in nose first. His words, under oath, are that the car appeared to be more on fire than the rest of the shed was. John Bergamin then sends him back around the rear of the shed, which is all well alight by now, to drag out a block splitter, because the block splitter, he says, is the only thing in there that is not insured. And so by Wasan's account, 40 to 55 minutes went by between the end of the oxy work up at the shed and the fire breaking out. That's a long time for something to be smouldering. The insurance man comes out that afternoon. John Horton, 28 years in the industry, area manager for the region. He looks at what is left and he thinks it is highly unusual. He thinks it is very strange that the Camry was reversed in. He calls in two assessors, one for the shed and one for the car. And every claim arising from that fire is eventually disallowed. The Camry was worth somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000. Strangely, at about 4:30 that same afternoon, the afternoon that his mother has gone missing, Stephen Bergamin walks into a car yard in Wangaratta and starts looking at vehicles in the $25,000 to $30,000 range. He tells the salesman he doesn't have to speak to his father about it and he'll be buying it out of his own account. The next day, Stephen comes back with a bank cheque for $26,500 for a new car. And there's one more scene from that Monday, one that stays with me. John Horton, the insurance man, is out at the property, as we've mentioned. He sees Stephen and asks him whether he has seen his mother. Stephen says not in a while, and Renee mentioned she was going on holiday. Later, Dylan and Renee turn up with pizza, and Horton leans forward and looks Renee directly in the eye and asks whether her mother has gone on holiday. Horton's evidence is that she looked puzzled when asked that question. She looked over at her brother Stephen, and Stephen had his head turned away. But Horton could see him nodding yes to her. And then Renee looked away and looked down at the floor. She was 15 years old. On the Tuesday morning, Senior Constable Mick Harvey finally gets out to the farm to serve the second intervention order, the one that he's been trying to hand over since Saturday. John Bergamin takes it without a fuss, and Harvey finds that deeply unusual because it has never gone as smoothly as this before. He also takes the time to talk to Stephen, who tells him he last saw his mother at 4:30 on the Sunday. And Harvey's description of that conversation is as follows. Stephen was extremely agitated, like a cat on a hot tin roof, he said. He couldn't keep still, would not answer the questions, kept changing the subject. He even offered the senior constable a cup of tea on 3 separate occasions, and each time it was though he had not heard the answer to the last one. Harvey had dealt with this family before more than once over the intervention orders, and his evidence to the coroner is that on those previous occasions they had been over the top with him and openly critical of Kath. But this time, everything was accepted without question, and he found that unnatural. On the 22nd of August, the Homicide Squad Missing Persons Unit takes the case. What follows is not a small investigation. They interview everyone Kath knew. They put electronic and physical surveillance on John and Stephen Bergamin. They get a warrant under the Crimes Act and search the farm and a vehicle. They take DNA from both men. They run national checks with Centrelink, the banks, births, deaths and marriages, electoral offices, every major telco, utility companies in every state and territory. Nothing. Not one transaction. Not one contact. Not one sign anywhere in the country that Kath Bergamin is alive somewhere else. And so they search for her body for months. They dig up parts of the Cheshunt farm. In November, they line searched the last 3.5 kilometres of a forestry track at Cheshunt South, 100 metres either side. There was a dog squad, an air wing, and a mounted branch of the SES, all pushing through blackberry and swamp, checking hollow logs and forks of trees. Partway along, the wind brings them the smell of something dead, and every heart rate of that line goes up. It turns out to be a wallaby. They search at Docker too. Divers go into the King River. But none of this led to Kath being found. She is still missing. Back at the house in Bryan Crescent on the 28th of August, they find the tape. It is silver Nitto brand duct tape, and it's lying on the ground in the rear yard near the garage. It's been fashioned into a figure 8. Inside the house, they find a small square of it, same brand, same colour, and it's stuck to a cushion in the lounge room. The coroner said the configuration of the tape suggested it may have been used to bind human limbs. But then, in the very next sentence, he said no weight attaches to that evidence. What he did give weight to is this. A forensic officer named Peter Ross came to be satisfied that it was more probable than not that red fibres taken from Kath Bergamin's sock were the same as the red fibres found attached to the tape. Her sock, the one that we know she was wearing on the Sunday, the one that was still lying in the hallway on Monday morning, stuck to that tape. In 2006, John Bergamin was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife. He walked into the Myrtleford court in his farm clothes. In 2007, on advice, the charge was dropped for want of evidence. And it's important that I hold that for a moment. Despite the intensive work of the local police force, there is quite simply not enough evidence to say that John Bergamin was involved. At least not enough that he could be proven guilty in a court of law. The inquest ran 10 days at Wangaratta in the winter of 2007, and then twice more in Melbourne. And in the middle of all that, in the August, a Crime Stoppers advertisement went out, and a woman rang up and said that she'd been walking a dog in Donald Street that night. On the 4th of June 2008, Coroner Peter White handed down 19 findings, and I'll cover them all here now. The first 3 of those findings are about witnesses. He found one man, Neil Colston, was not a credible witness and attached no weight to his evidence at all. He found the same of Pat Primerano. And he found that the recollections of Renee and Dylan Bergamin, who were 15 and 12 when their mother disappeared, were unreliable, and that little or no weight could properly attach to their evidence. And then he turned to the marriage itself. He found that in the later years of it, John Bergamin regularly resorted to acts intended to cause fright to his wife, and that he did it with the primary intention of keeping her living a chess hunt. He found that conduct caused or contributed to the depression that ended with her attempt on her own life in February 2002. He found that after she left, John Bergamin began a campaign to put further pressure on her, and that the campaign intensified as he became aware that she was seeing other men. He found that the fire was deliberately lit and helped along with accelerant. He found John Bergamin was party to starting that fire, and that he went back down to the bottom paddock to distance himself from it. He also found that Stephen Bergamin knew beforehand that somebody, including his father, intended to destroy that car, and that he condoned it. But importantly, he found that there was not enough evidence to establish why that fire was deliberately lit. He also stated that what had happened at the farm on the Monday morning, as suspicious as it was not relevant to what could properly be drawn from Margaret Scutt's evidence. He said that her evidence established that an unknown male was at the door shortly after 7:26, and that it fell well short of establishing who that male was or who owned the car parked across the road. And then finding 18. On the 18th of August 2002, at some point between 7:26 and the return of Sandy Riley at about 11:15, Kath Bergamin was taken from that house, or otherwise forced to leave it. That, at an unknown time and an unknown place, she was unlawfully killed, and that a person or persons seeking by their acts to avoid detection secretly deposited her remains in a still unknown location. And finding 19, that there is insufficient evidence to establish which person or persons were responsible. There is one more finding 10, and I'll leave it till last because I think perhaps it's the most important finding for us to report on here. Despite the pressure that she was under, the coroner wrote, and notwithstanding her arthritis and her drinking, he was entirely satisfied that Kath Bergamin had kept a positive attitude towards her life and her children, and towards her job and her studies. That she had no wish to leave Wangaratta, and no intention at that point of ending her own life. He put that in the findings because he could see what was coming. A woman with a psychiatric history and one attempt on her life behind her goes missing. And there is an obvious story available to anyone who wants to take control of the narrative. But he shut that door on the record, in writing, and he did it very deliberately. And I wanted to reiterate those sentiments here on this podcast. Kath had taken control back of her own life. She was making a go of it. Outside the court, her brother, Roger Russell, said the coroner had given the best finding that was available to him on the evidence he had. He said the credibility of some of the witnesses had been dubious, and that several of them were not forthright with the truth. He said that Kath's family had their own theories, that it seemed pretty obvious to them what had happened, and that the evidence was missing because it had been deliberately destroyed or obscured. Also outside the court, John Bergamin's barrister, Philip Dunn QC, said his client believed strongly that he was innocent. He said John Bergamin believed there were people in Wangaratta who knew a great deal more about the disappearance of Kath than they had ever told the police, that they had not come forward for a very good reason, and that he hoped that the police kept digging. I'll let you decide which of those two statements holds the most weight with you. Then in March 2017, 15 years on, the case came to life again, when a letter turned up at the missing person squad. It was anonymous, no name. And in that letter, a very specific piece of information about Kath Bergamin's murder, including who was involved. Police said that the writer either had been told what had happened or had been there when she was taken, and that they also appeared to know where her remains were. The writer knew things that no one outside of this investigation could have known. The letter asked for indemnity from prosecution. On the envelope there was a barely visible B and an E, and then a run of numbers nobody could read. Police said they were reasonably confident it was posted from either Bendigo or Benalla or somewhere in between. The officer in charge said the letter told them there are people out there who know she is dead, who know who killed her, and who know where she is now. And perhaps most importantly, that having this information is still troubling them. He said the weight of that knowledge is sitting on somebody significantly, and they will want to get it off their chest, and that this can be a very difficult process to work through. The other thing that we know is that in September 2020, detectives interviewed 5 people in the space of the week regarding this case, 4 Victorians and 1 bloke from across the border in New South Wales, and all 5 were released. That's the extent of the information that was released about those interviews. The reward is $1 million. The letter writer has never come forward again. And I want to finish this episode with an appeal to that letter writer, because I think they might be listening. Not because there's anything special about my humble little podcast, but I believe that if it were me, if I had information that had been tearing me up for 24 years, I'd spend a heck of a lot of time on the internet searching the name Kath Bergamin. I'd scour every social media message board. I'd read every newspaper article that I could. I'd listen to every podcast episode, including this one. And if I'm right on that, if you are listening, I'd urge you now to muster all of your bravery and to reach out to Crime Stoppers on 1800 333 000. Until next time, this has been Struth.
Some people use ChatGPT to answer questions. Others use it to get real work done. With ChatGPT Work, you bring the goal, plus real inputs like briefs, notes, files, feedback, data, and project plans. It can help turn them into an analysis, tracker, deck outline, prototype, or workflow you can review and keep shaping. You stay in control, giving direction and choosing the final output. Put ChatGPT to work on your most ambitious ideas and projects. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting Work Mode. Available on Plus and Pro plans.
Hey, did you know Dietz & Watson has been family-owned for over 85 years? To us, that means it's more than a business. It's personal. We make our premium meats and cheeses the right way, even if it's slower or inconvenient or hard, because that's how you get the highest quality. If it's not good enough for our family, it's not good enough for yours. And while others cut corners, we keep raising the bar. So if you see the Dietz & Watson name, you'll know every slice has my family's seal of approval. Dietz & Watson, it's a family thing since 1939.
There are exciting things happening at your local CVS. Shop new extra big deals with Extra Care every 2 weeks. No coupon needed. Plus, get access to exclusive sale prices, personalized deals, and more as a member. Extra care is the way to save at CVS. Join for free online or in-store and start saving. Visit your local CVS store or cvs.com/extra big deals for this week's deals.
This is Tony Ayo from The Real Report with Tony Ayo and Uncle Murder. You ever notice how everything keeps going up? Rent, streaming, even extra salsa at your favorite burrito spot? But with Boost Mobile, you don't have to play the will this go up soon game. Boost Mobile offers an unlimited talk, text, and data plan at a price that'll never go up. It's the same price you'll pay for life. Switch now for unlimited wireless at a price that'll never go up, only at Boost Mobile. After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.